Columbine. It's a name everyone knows, a date seared into our minds. But I think as time passes, it's worth asking, do we really understand Columbine High School?
Hmm. Yeah. I think there's a difference between knowing the basic facts and really grasping the depth of what happened and why.
Right. And that's what we're aiming for today. Using excerpts from this academic text, let's do a deep dive. Not just the events, but the why, the perpetrators, the motives, the ripple effects we still feel.
Absolutely. And I think a good place to start is with Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold themselves, before they became the names associated with this tragedy.
Okay, yeah. Because we throw around labels like monsters, but from what I read, it's way more complex than that.
Oh, for sure. Take Eric Harris. Many described him as intelligent, like even his writing, some of his disturbing stuff. You can see a high level of linguistic skill there.
It's not what people expect, right? You think angry rants, but it's more calculated.
Exactly. He was in score activities, too, debate team, even theater productions. But underneath, there was this brewing darkness. Like his website had all this disturbing content, violent fantasies, even bomb-making instructions.
Mm. It's that contrast that gets me. He wasn't just some isolated loner. Then you have Dylan Klebold. Reports say he struggled with depression, self-esteem issues.
And yet friends saw him as kind, creative, this weird conflict between his inner world and how others perceived him.
Both of them, in different ways, grappling with this feeling of being alienated, I guess.
And that's where their friendship gets toxic. They fed off each other's anger, resentment, taking normal teenage angst and twisting it into this focused hatred towards their school, society as a whole.
Chilling quote from their journals, they wrote, "We are going to kickstart a revolution." It's not just lashing out. They saw themselves as fighting against something.
Wow. Yeah. Warriors against the system. That's how they viewed themselves. And the planning, the level of detail is scary. This wasn't some spur of the moment thing. Over a year meticulously plotting the weapons, a Tech 9, a high-point carbine rifle, dot explosives.
Yeah, it's hard to even grasp. And you know what's even more unsettling? Their original plan was a bombing
Oh.
on the scale of Oklahoma City.
Yeah. The shooting, as awful as it was, that was the backup plan. Their commitment to mass destruction.
Then there's the basement tapes, right? Where they lay out their motives, even rehearse the attack.
Those tapes, psychologists have studied them extensively, trying to get into the minds of these two, understand that mix of anger, despair.
So to set the scene, April 20th, 1999, they arrive at Columbine, weapons hidden under trench coats.
They'd planted propane bombs in the cafeteria, set to go off at 11:17 a.m. But the wiring was faulty. They didn't detonate properly.
Makes you wonder, what if they had gone off? The scale of this could have been.
Unthinkable. We can only speculate how things might have unfolded. But yeah, the potential for even more devastation was definitely there.
So 11:19 a.m., minutes after the bombs were supposed to explode, the shooting starts in the parking lot. Rachel Scott, their first victim, killed instantly.
It's almost like from there, their movements through the school become more strategic, almost tactical. It wasn't just random shooting. They had a plan, and they were executing it.
So we're really seeing the difference between just like an outburst and a premeditated attack at this point.
Exactly.
They targeted students in the hallways, the library, which leads us to probably the most infamous part of it all, the library massacre.
Yeah, the library. In 7 minutes, 10 students killed, 12 more wounded. That one space became the epicenter of the tragedy. And there's been a lot of talk about the victims in the library, Rachel Scott, and this myth that she was targeted for her faith.
That's always been something I've wondered about. What does this source say about that?
Well, the source we have here says that while she is asked about her beliefs, there's really no definitive proof that that was the sole reason she was killed.
I guess it's a reminder that even when trying to understand something this horrific, you have to be careful, not get caught up in narratives that might not be completely factual.
Sure. It's about looking at the evidence, not just the stories that have been circulating.
Absolutely. We also have to remember, there were other victims in the library.
Yeah.
Cassie Bernal, Isaiah Schulz, they lost their lives too.
Right. It's so important to acknowledge all of them. And amidst all the horror, there were these glimmers of hope.
Oh, yeah.
Like Dave Sanders, a teacher at Columbine. He risked his life to warn students, get them to safety. Tragically, he was shot and killed, but he saved countless lives.
A true hero. That instinct to protect, even when facing unimaginable danger. It's remarkable.
It is. The shooting ended at 12:08 p.m. when Harris and Klebold returned to the library and took their own lives. They were found surrounded by unused ammo, explosives, a chilling reminder of just how much worse it could have been.
I can't even imagine. So the immediate chaos subsides, But of course, the impact of Columbine, it's just beginning. Law enforcement agencies across the nation were, I imagine, scrambling, trying to comprehend what happened and prevent anything like it ever happening again.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was definitely criticism of the police response at Columbine, specifically the time it took to enter the school.
Yeah.
It kind of exposed the flaws in the way things were done back then, how unprepared they were for a situation like this.
And then, of course, you have the media descending on Columbine practically immediately. This is the early days of that 24-hour news cycle. I mean, constant images, information.
Mm.
Do you think that played a part in the lasting impact of this event?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think it's likely.
Yeah.
The constant replays of the events, the focus on the perpetrators, it shapes public perception, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's almost like if this happened even a few years earlier in a pre-internet, pre-24-hour news world, would our understanding be different? You know, it's a fascinating thought.
It really is. Columbine became this instant global event, something that just seared itself into the collective consciousness.
And in the aftermath is when you really start to see the ripple effects, lasting changes, school safety, mental health, gun control. Everything's different now.
You're absolutely right. Schools all over the country went into lockdown mode.
Yeah.
Metal detectors at entrances, things you didn't really see before Columbine.
And the lockdown drills, I mean, those have become a staple of the school experience for generations now. I remember them. Lights out, everyone silent, huddled in a corner. Even though you knew it was a drill, there was always this sense of vulnerability. I wonder if that's part of the legacy, too, that feeling of anxiety.
It's a tough question. Yeah, you want schools to be safe, but at what cost? Do we turn them into fortresses where kids are constantly on edge?
It's a tough balance to strike.
It really is. We have to have these conversations about the consequences, both intended and unintended.
For sure. Now, Columbine also brought mental health to the forefront, especially for young people. We couldn't ignore the warning signs anymore.
Yeah. More funding for mental health programs in schools, trying to tackle bullying, depression, social isolation, all these things that were often brushed aside before.
But has it been enough? Are we really supporting young people the way we should?
It's the question, isn't it? Awareness is up, resources are there, but access is still a huge problem, especially for certain communities. And then, of course, you have gun control.
Well,
Columbine put that right at the center of the national debate.
absolutely. Groups like Moms Demand Action,
Yeah.
Every Town for Gun Safety, they trace their origins back to Columbine.
The whole debate about background checks, waiting periods, assault weapon bans, it all got reignited. You saw how divided we are as a country on this issue.
Yeah, Columbine really seems to be this, dividing line in the gun control conversation. It's almost like things shifted after that.
It's true. It became this rallying cry for both sides, and that made it even harder to find any common ground.
And it wasn't just about policy, right? Columbine had a cultural impact, too. Huge one.
Huge. It became this dark inspiration for copycat attacks, like Virginia Tech in 2007, and unfortunately so many others since then. The way Columbine was covered, the way it was analyzed, it almost provided a blueprint for future violence.
It's a disturbing thought.
Yeah.
And I think there was also a renewed focus on the influence of media. Violent video games, music, movies. That whole debate about whether those things desensitize us to violence or even inspire it.
Oh, definitely. And those are debates that haven't gone away. It's important to examine the role these forms of entertainment play, especially for young people.
But even with all those external factors, I keep coming back to the perpetrators.
Yeah.
Trying to understand their minds, their motivations. Why did they do this?
Right. That's where things get really complicated and kind of ethically tricky, too. Because we can analyze, we can theorize, but we'll never truly know what was going on inside their heads.
We can't get inside their minds. We can look at psychology, sociology, all that, but there's always going to be a piece missing.
Yeah. And we have to be careful not to oversimplify, not to reduce them to these one-dimensional villains, even though they did was horrific.
Understand them, but don't excuse them.
Exactly. The source we're using, it talks about some of the psychological theories applied to Eric and Dylan. Like with Eric, there's this idea that he had psychopathic traits, lack of empathy, manipulative, grandiose sense of self.
But just labeling him a psychopath, isn't that too simple?
Yeah, probably. Psychopathy is a spectrum, right? Different levels of severity. And mental illness is it's complex. It doesn't automatically equal violence.
Right, and with Dylan, there's the depression, the suicidal thoughts. Those seem to have played a huge role.
And, his feelings of being inadequate, isolated, those were likely amplified by his relationship with Eric. It's like they fed off each other's darkness.
So we're not looking for one answer, one cause. It's the interplay of all these things.
Yeah, that's the key. Individual vulnerabilities, shared resentment, the culture they were in, access to guns, the media, failings of the mental health system, it all built up to this.
So as we try to make sense of this tragedy, what are the biggest lessons we've learned from Columbine? And are we actually applying those lessons?
Well, one thing Columbine showed us is that it can happen anywhere. It shattered this illusion of safety that a lot of communities had, you know. It forced us to acknowledge that violence can erupt even in places we think of as safe.
And the importance of early intervention, paying attention to those warning signs, providing support, even if it seems small.
Absolutely. And it changed how we think about school safety, not just about metal detectors and cameras, but creating a culture of empathy and support within a school.
Creating a place where students feel safe asking for help, where adults are trained to see the signs.
Right. Addressing the root causes, not just reacting to the symptoms.
And we can't forget responsible media coverage.
Yeah, how we talk about these events, the images we choose to show, it all has an impact. It can even inspire more violence, you know?
It's tough. Balancing the need to inform with the risk of sensationalizing.
It is, and it's a balance we're still figuring out as a society.
Columbine really showed how interconnected everything is. Mental health, gun control, social isolation, bullying, media. It's all part of this web.
Yeah, a tangled web. No easy answers.
Yeah.
But recognizing that complexity is, I think, the first step to even trying to address it.
Columbine really forced us to face some uncomfortable truths. Not just about the perpetrators, but about ourselves, about society as a whole, right?
That's it, yeah. Challenge our assumptions about safety, about what it means to be a teenager, about our communities.
So much to unpack. Having gone through all this, what stands out to you as the biggest takeaways from Columbine?
I think for me, it's the importance of context. It's easy to get caught up in the horror of that day, but to really learn from it, you got to go deeper. What were the societal forces at play? What created the conditions for this to happen?
Connecting the dots, seeing how individual actions are part of something bigger.
Exactly. Columbine wasn't just an isolated event. It was a symptom of larger issues that we're still dealing with today.
It's a dark legacy, no doubt.
Yeah.
But there's also a story of resilience there, right? We had to face hard truths, but we also saw this incredible outpouring of compassion, this desire to heal.
Oh, yeah. The support for the victims, the families, the first responders, the mental health professionals, and all the people working to prevent this from happening again. It's inspiring.
It shows that even in the face of something this awful, there's hope. As we wrap up, is there a question, something you'd want our listeners to think about?
I'd ask them this. What can you do in your own life, your community, to make the world a little bit safer, a little bit more compassionate? It's not just about policies or security. It's about fostering empathy, understanding.
Those everyday actions, right? Small acts of kindness, conversations that can maybe make a difference.
Exactly, because even the smallest ripple can spread outward.
Columbine wasn't just an event, it was a turning point. And its impact is still felt today. It reminds us how fragile life is, the consequences of hate and violence, and how much we need to keep talking to each other, keep trying to understand. We hope you'll check out the source material we use, dig deeper into this yourself, remember the victims, honor their memory, and let their stories push us to create a better future. A future where this never happens again. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.